Good evening. My name is Bob the Tree Moore. You're watching the Cambridge Environment. The purpose of this show is to go into the world around us in Cambridge, explain where it's going to, where it's coming from, and what that nasty city government has to do with all this stuff. We've got a special guest today. This is Dr. Robin Pope. She's from the University of Graz, Austria, and she has been quite familiar with the Charles River. And she has some very strong opinions of the area. Robin, would you care to tell us what you're doing, what you want to talk about?
Yes, well, let me tell you first why I'm here. I'm here to help get over a wrong turn that's been taken by economists. As you may be aware, economists have been driving our economies around the world in bad directions from the 1980s. They've dismantled all the safety provisions, not all, but a large number, that were put in under the New Deal and under the Keynesian mixed economy. And they don't understand that this has caused damage, even though they know that their actual models cannot predict or even track afterwards and explain what's been going wrong and how we've got to this populist place. And what they have got into is the wrong turn of preoccupied with algebra that is maximising in a calculus way, and they have ignored the problem that was pointed out in the 17th century by Pascal, the father of risky choice theory, and by the game theorists von Neumann and Morgenstern in the 40s already, that they could not work out how to include risk experiences, which of course means that this form of maximising is absurd. I have shown what the problem was, the complementarity paradox that they faced, that one needs to have in a period before when you are under risk and you know there will be a change in knowledge ahead, but you do not know what it is. And once you put this in, you can understand, instead of regarding them as silly, all those safety measures. Without them, you have the sad situation we have where you have Nobel laureates like Robert Lucas, where you have models where shocks, which are the outcomes of risk, can be that you have minus infinity and the people just stay alive. It doesn't hurt human capital. The same general similarity happens in the works of other Nobel laureates, including here from MIT, say Robert Solow. You cannot measure, you cannot avoid having contradictory ideas about the size, e.g., of the Mass General Hospital, and you cannot care for nature. You cannot see what shocks it gets. On the Friends of the White Geese, those of you who like doing algebra for helping the people get over their wrong turns and understand that you don't just have algebra, you don't just construct sudokus. What you need is to have science where the symbols about risk refer to the real world. It's quite simple to do, and these enriched sudokus, I suggest that some of you and some of your children might like to construct to help get over this wrong way, which is also in related ways in biology, in which I also have research in mental health and in the calculuses used by physicists who are using the outdated Newtonian one, which does not get these matters correct either. Now, the risks to the nature and so on are almost all bad, but for the human brain, we need challenges. So in my mental health work, this is how the brain developed for processing risk. The sorts of challenges I'll put forward to you today are ones that will help you in that well-being, as well as help take our environment away from the precipice that we face at the moment with the climate changes. I'll spend a little time first on some of the heart-rending things that have gone wrong, along the Charles River, and then I'll suggest some remedies, some things that are quite quick to do and some that are more, and that will give us new health. Now, we have here, first of all, a lovely scene from fall. This is early fall, October, taken by Bob Tremoy. And here you see the beautiful yellow of the lindens. Behind them you can see the teeny little cherry trees. And you might say, is this the scene in the Garden of Eden? In some ways, yes. If you go further along to the left of the picture, you will come to the mulberry tree where in the spring the little ducklings and the little goslings eat the mulberries, actually more into the summer. And so do people. And you'll come to the cherry grove that used to be there. It was not all completely idyllic. In this photo, you can't see it, but right down at the edge, because it's been cut down just recently, most of the year there is a boring monoculture. There was of false indigo blocking people and only a couple of openings for the geese. But it still was quite nice. If we look at the next one, we can see it in late fall, again taken by Bob La Tremoy. You see the last leaves of one of the dear little cherry trees there, that in the spring people laid out their carpets and sat and laid up and looked toward the cherry blossoms. We can also have a look, and the next one we see how there has been stewardship of the white geese. These are not natural, they were brought in. They are a domesticated semi-sort who guarded the waterworks. You can see they live in a horrible spot by then because their nesting area had largely been destroyed. The undergrowth and gravel and so on is in. But just the same, as we see from the next picture, they were still breeding. In the spring, every runner going by, every tourist stopped and took a photo of two proud parents, typically with about 6 of these darling fluffy birds, part of the stewardship of Alison of Boston University and Beale, part of the stewardship also of Marilyn and Bob in the Friends of the White Geese, in looking after these who had had also their area where they fed damaged. It was not, though, all as paradise. Next to the Boston University boathouse, with a very steep incline, a strip had been taken away. That went steeply down, and this is absurd. This meant you just got erosion down it.
Do you want me to go to the next photo?
And then things, not yet, and then things got even worse. When we see from the next photo what had happened, I looked out and I found there were orange marks on all the trees, even the first of those willows that we were looking at. If we look at the next one then. And what had happened? They had decided to cut down 150 trees along here. The first story I was told, this is before they'd been executed, but they had their execution orange marks, that they were dead. I explained they lose their leaves in the fall. I was then told, oh, it's better to have twice as many saplings. I explained these take 50 years to grow. You are accelerating climate damage and soil erosion. I was then told, oh, runners' feet, but most of them are damaging them, but they were not damaged, and they were long way from where any runners could go, many in very steep bits. What had happened? Here you can see no cherry trees, no lindens, just bare soil. And then we look at the next one to see that is now December. For a whole year, there was just nothing. What was put in? a new asphalt path, but the new asphalt path, when we zoom in here, we'll see that they couldn't lay it properly. Less of it has got above water when the water comes. There we've got, that's right, that's just the spot where we get a whole lot of water on it. If we look at the lower path started as pale cream sand. What is it now? It has all the erosion. If we zoom in a bit more, it may be difficult for you to see, but there are a whole lot of rivulets. Before yes, they had in 3 spots, which I was shocked at, erosion. This topsoil, that is what is valuable to the plants, was running into the river, but rather little. Now there might be 400 rivulets just between Boston University Bridge and the next bridge. This, of course, is a fantastic destruction. If we look too on this picture, we can see what have they done. This is the Department of Recreation and Conservation. We find that the bicyclists who are restricted to the asphalt, well, the asphalt often covered in mud in parts, as you see, that the cyclists will not be able to see any glimpses. Before, you had the trees in bunches, and in between people could look out. They could look out and see that beautiful scene this way towards the Boston skyline. They could look the other way and see the Boston University Bridge in the sunset. They won't be able to do either. And now if we move on, so it has not been done in a proper way for people either. Here we see that they have removed from this area the false indigo that was a boring monoculture. They have put in some nice white stones, and there are ones that people could sit on. But what do people have which way are they allowed to sit? There are little ropes now around them. They can sit on that square block, but they can only sit on it looking away from the river. They have put bushes on each side. The only way people can look at the river or look at the skyline in one direction or look at the sunset in the other is by trampling on the bushes. And the bushes go all along. Why have they the bushes all along here? This prevents people getting down to the water, which they should be able to. It means that the joy before of walking along that riverbank and seeing the white geese, it was beautiful after midnight walking along to see them. Everybody loved to see them bring up their babies. There are no gaps. They are blocked off. They have been blocked off as they were on the other side, where people too, when we go further up, here we're looking east. If you go further west, you come to Magazine Park. And that too, I was shocked to see. It was ugly, with a whole barrier of young basket willow. This is horrible for people, like being put in a prison on that side. And this also blocked out the white geese, where this had been their traditional feeding area, and where, as Marilyn said recently in testimony that we were giving at the Conservation Centre, it had destroyed what she just adored to do, to go and sit on that bank and watch the geese, the white geese, come up. And that's what has happened since. More destruction is planned on the Magazine Park side. Now then, let us look at the sorts of things we can do to alter all this. For surely, having this sort of thing happen in 2016 and 17 is absurd. But before we start looking at the remedies, let us look at another piece. Here we have what the Cambridge City Council proposed as a bike path. What you have here is you have on the right, you have the Charles River. At the bottom, you have the Boston University Bridge. Going in a diagonal across is the railway line. And what are they planning? They say This is the 2006 plan. This is a bike path. Well, this is absurd for several reasons. First, if you have the full plan, you see it is duplicating a bigger, better bike path on each side of Vassar Street up to the top left-hand corner. Why would one spend $3 million doing that? This piece down the bottom, the railway goes under the road, Memorial Drive. The road down to the bottom by the water there is so steep you would not even a stunt bike rider would consider doing it. This is preposterous. If we have a look instead at the MIT plan for 2014, we can understand what is happening. What is happening here? Now, in this little picture here, you can see the railway line. No, that was good before, Bob, yes. The railway line coming at a diagonal to go along and under the Boston University Bridge. And we see, you can't see the height, but of course that proposed bike path would be doing a jump down, a stunt jump down from Memorial Drive down to the level of the railway track and up for bikes, of course. This is nonsense. On the plan for the MIT, we see that this is an exit from the turnpike. In other words, what we have here is MIT planning to take cars off the turnpike and pretending it's for cycles, but instead what they're doing is they're planning a great big exit, a mass increase in the number of cars coming across into Cambridge. This is the type of thing that has been happening around the world, and the US has been very bad in doing it also, in that what is happening is that if we go back to 1970, there has been a huge increase in the number of people who live in Cambridge and work somewhere else, and a likewise huge increase, around 50%, who come into Cambridge, not even from a neighbouring suburb, but from farther away. This is a large part of our global warming. It is a large part of our having 34,000 people per year killed in car accidents here and other very bad damages to their health. What we need to get instead is a set of paths going in which we help do alternative plans that make things good here. One has to say that Harvard University has been equally on the side of causing climate change in what it's done in the past and in some of its early plans for Alston recently. Yeah.
Could I explain your highway concept?
Yes, do.
Okay, good.
It's not my highway concept, of course, it's MIT's.
Yeah. What happened is, back in 2003, the Mass Bay Transit Authority studied the Grand Junction Bridge, and they demonstrated that the Grand Junction Bridge can be expanded to 3 lanes. 2 lanes this way, 1 way toward, 1 way away from, and a railroad track. And this is exactly what she's talking about. You've got, I think there's a situation with regard to a mural you're talking about?
Yes. If you go down and have a look at the Micro Centre on Memorial Drive, there was an earlier plan to do this in the 1970s and destroy a lot of Cambridge. And at that time, the Cambridge residents got together and they successfully prevented it happening. Clearly, there is a need for the Cambridge residents to get together and do this again. And there is a meeting, I gather, on the 30th of March. Now, this is one opportunity and one bit that I hope some of you will be taking to start on the process. Of course, how to get community action will require a lot of grassworks efforts, likely. For there is a problem that sub-community groups have been captured by the lobbies that are racing the whole country to the precipice. And it is a great shame that somewhere like Cambridge, that perhaps has the highest level of PhDs and highly educated people in the country, is helping the process. There are, of course, groups in Harvard and MIT who oppose these sorts of things, as also in Lesley University in many ways has taken a greater lead in caring for preserving the wildlife, for instance, in Alewife. And one needs to be looking at how to get community groups reformed so they don't just tell things as a fait accompli. One thing we need done for planning, especially construction, is very complex, and it's easy to make a lot of mistakes and do this awful destruction that we are getting, where they've cut out trees, put in cement slabs for people to sit. They haven't thought where the views are. The main one is looking at the MIT boathouse. This is not what people come and photograph as the most beautiful bit. Many would regard it as an obstruction of the view. One little thing that could be done is to have MIT build a roof deck over it so that people can enjoy looking out and have it open to the public, as also should be done on all other high buildings everywhere in every country with a roof garden on them. There needs to be a very big sign up, and one needs to do it because that destruction on that section of the Memorial Drive, it is still going on. Nothing has been fixed. I have written 2 letters to the governor. I have written ones that have been forwarded by Kathy Susie, who is working on Magazine Park, and Jennifer Letourneau to the Department of Conservation and Recreation last year. It just gets worse. What needs to be done is the public needs to say, we want to help in the supervision. Remember what happened when Boston was left alone on doing an under tunnel that was done so badly, part of it fell in and even killed someone. We have this sort of situation here, which may be all just extraordinary incompetence. Fancy putting in a path that's shorter and worse than the one you replaced it for 7 million. A big board up saying what is to be done in any area, for instance in Magazine Park, should be up for a month with invited comments on the internet and replying to each point, and everything made public and obvious. And with then when the construction starts, how much is being paid with the name of the person who signed off for each piece. It is very easy for any authority to get diddled on things. Bonn, the city of Bonn in Germany, has just recently lost maybe 100 million through mainly, in that case, fraud and corruption, but it can happen. Maybe the people of Cambridge just don't understand that when you build a path, you don't have the path lower than the soil, or you just have the soil pour onto it and pour into the river. This is the sort of thing one would hope had been learned, but it has not been learned. But if you have a big public boards up, you have the requirement that the officials give answers to the points on an internet form on each, and that you have them signed. This will help reduce this. One does not know. One suspects there is a cost overrun on this matter of extreme destruction, because after all it was supposed to be finished 6 months ago and it's still in no sight near. And one has to be alarmed at the one planned for Magazine Park up, which is not remedying the inherent problems there were of the 2 barriers, the barrier of the willows that would be very simple to remove. There are lovely trees behind these every so often, and wildflowers. It would be a joy for people to be able to sit and look through for the white geese to come up, make it all beautiful, and to remove the boring false indigo that is further up. There seem no plans for there or for this part that has been destroyed to put in any terracing, prevention of soil erosion, beautiful spots for people to sit and enjoy their water. I find no plans either. The water needs to be made safe for swimming. With global warming, this is a most wonderful option. It is very necessary to have. And when we look at what can be done as a vision for this Charles Basin, after all, it isn't one of those extraordinary spots in the world. There is more than enough money. The value of the land on each side, and this is a local tax that would be needed for doing it, is far more than when New York City put in its Central Park. In the 1850s this started. It can have a beautiful shape. It will have clear water. You will have undulating slopes instead of the boring ones that we have. It can replicate something that MIT did in the tech. There was a lovely article in the early 90s, and it was that sort of plan, that beautiful plan, could be realised, and one immediately takes the cars off Memorial Drive. It has one trolley along. It has a couple of lanes for the speed bicyclists to and from in the morning, and these are then freed up in the middle of the day.
We are in the last 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your presentation. This show is copyright 2017, Friends of the White Geese. We'll be back next week. Thank you. This has been the latest in a series intended to delineate the drastic help needed against more of such carnage. In the next report, Robin Pope will talk on what can be restored, on tributes to those who have kept the torch for nature, and on Cambridge's role in global warming alike. Then she will present glimpses of her vision, from steps to know, love, and enjoy nature, and so to transform Charles River regions into inclusive World Heritage beauty and sustainable non-commuter nodules.